Well, I know she was in worship, and she wasn't in a building, she was in front of the Walmart. And I saw it just the other day. I was coming out of the Walmart, and she and her family, I think they were her family, were coming in. She looked to be about 6 years old. 6 years old. And I noticed, the clouds had been low throughout the afternoon, and just as I was about to come out of the Walmart, it started to rain. And she and her parents, I think were her parents, were coming in. Now, one thing you need to remember about children, if you're 6, 7, I don't know what you all are, when you're kind of that age, you're not like the adults. You're not self-conscious. You're not worried about what people think. You're just real. And this little girl was coming toward the Walmart, and the rain fell out of the sky, and she raised her arms up in the air and said, "Thank you, God." Mom and Dad kind of looked. "Come on, let's come in." I love that. An act of worship right there in front of Walmart. Sometimes little kids get what some of us don't. And sometimes older people get what some of us don't. One of the books I read while I was away is a book entitled The Poet of Tolstoy Park by Sonny Brewer. And on the dedication page, he wrote the following. This book is dedicated to 4 people who proved to me that getting old does not mean winding down. Helen Nanny Prados. She lived on her own until 92, and at the age of 93 reads 2 books a week. Wendy Johnston, at 80 years old, was still teaching children how to windsurf at the Fairhope, Alabama Yacht Club. 80 years old. Ray Parmley, who for 25 years lived on his 42-foot sloop and sailed it to Cuba, get this, when he was 80. How about that? And then finally he says, and Mama, Nylene Estes, God bless her, lived through a stroke the doctor said she wouldn't, and still strong as a horse at 73. Somehow, little kids and somehow some older people have learned something about what it means to live. You ever ask yourself questions like this? I don't mean these aren't middle of the day questions usually. Sometimes these are 3 in the morning questions. Late at night questions, maybe. Am I fulfilling my purpose? You ever just ask yourself that question? Is this why I was put here, what I do every day? Maybe you ask yourself a question like this. Am I really experiencing what it means to be a woman? I mean, is this it? Am I really experiencing what God intended for me to experience as a married woman, as a wife? Am I really experiencing what God intended for me to experience as a mother? Am I on that now? Or as a guy? Whatever it means to be a man, am I there? Am I doing it? Have I got it going on so that I know that the Lord, I just know the way I'm living and what I'm doing is the way God always intended for a man to live. And in this marriage, am I really experiencing marriage as a guy the way God always intended for a guy to experience marriage? Are we experiencing the joy that we were always meant to experience? And what about as a dad? And finally, just as human beings, are we, men, women, single, married, divorced, whatever you are, teenager, college student, am I experiencing what it means to be human? They thought it was all over. And you may have felt that way before, given your circumstances. But they had messed up royally. And it wasn't any one thing. It had gone on for years. And finally, God just said, you know, you can go, if you want to go your own way, you'll go your own way. And he allowed Babylon. When you hear the word Babylon, think of big muscular people flexing their muscles, military might. He allowed Babylon to come into the northern part of Israel and just ravage the nation and take away some of the best and brightest back to Babylon. Guess that's it. Guess it's all over. Or as my mama said, I guess that's all she wrote. And then you turn to Isaiah 26. And in Isaiah 26, there is this picture of what life is going to be like when the people of God are released from Babylon and they get to come back home. Isaiah 26, let's read 1 through 9. In that day, this song will be sung in the land of Judah. We have a strong city. What? We have a strong city. I thought the city was, it was. The reason it's a strong city is because God is present. We have a strong city. God makes salvation its walls and ramparts. Open the gates that the righteous nation may enter, the nation that keeps faith. It is a picture of the people of God when everything seemed to point south is going to be able to return home. You will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord is the rock eternal. Somebody here may want to hold on to verse 4 this week. He humbles those who dwell on high, and he lays the lofty city low. He levels it to the ground and casts it down to the dust. Feet trample it down, the feet of the oppressed, the footsteps of the poor. I love this. This is a picture of Israel, not when they finally are able to flex their muscle, but when they're poor and they have nothing to offer as far as this world is concerned. And God is using them to defeat the nation of Babylon. No, not in a military sort of way. But they were to prove that Babylon was not in charge and not in control. The path, verse 7, of the righteous is level. O upright one, you make the way of the righteous smooth. Now, verse 8 and 9 are the verses I'd really like for you to hold on to, mark, make a note of. Yes, Lord, walking in the way of your laws. We wait for you. Your name and renown are the desire of our hearts. My soul yearns for you in the night, and in the morning my spirit longs for you. When your judgments come upon the earth, the people of the world learn righteousness. Your name and renown are the desire of our hearts. your name and your fame. That's what I want. Some of you read yesterday about the tragic death. 27-year-old Amy Winehouse, singer, had a tragic life as an adult, made some horrible decisions. Well, her death goes all over the internet in a matter of moments. We're not talking about the fame of a celebrity. This is the fame of God. It is the fame of God. And he's saying, that's on my heart. I want more than anything for God's name and God's fame to be out there. And I think about God when I get up in the morning. And when I wake in the middle of the night, I think about this God. We're going to come back. We've been gone for a number of weeks, and some of those weeks were vacation, and some were study. One of those weeks I co-taught a preaching class at what is now Harding School of Theology in Memphis. It used to be Harding Graduate School until the week I was there, and they changed that name. Had nothing to do with me. Changed that name, and I really appreciate the guys who preached in my absence, Craig and Scott and Jack. And I'm glad to be back. I'm going to share with you for just a few minutes something that I'm very, very concerned about, but it's good news. There's part of it that's good news, and it's what we'll be doing over the year. A number of you read my blog every day, A Place for the God Hungry, and all of that will begin tomorrow, and some of you read it through Facebook, and all of that will begin tomorrow, and some of these themes will be coming through that over coming days and months. This past year, we spent time looking at God's big story. What does it mean to be a people on mission? Now, one of the things we did this year as a church, and do this every summer. Jack leads this every summer. We did something called a mission trip. And it is a deliberate, intentional move to take a group somewhere. And that is good, and that is a part of the mission of God. But the mission of God began long before we showed up. Long ago. Remember, we unpacked all of this last year. The mission of God began as he was determined not to give up on his world, on us. And so now, after Jesus, after the cross, after the resurrection, in the power of the Holy Spirit, every day we go to school and we go to work and we go home, we're in our neighborhoods, and we're a people on mission wherever we are. That's why I would say that most of if somebody says, where does the ministry of this church happen? Most of it's not in this building. Most of it's wherever you are. If you're at home most of the time, or in the neighborhood most of the time, or at work most of the time, or at school most of the time, or at the university most of the time, that's where it happens. Been thinking all year, though, or not all year, but for a number of months, what kind of people do we have to be, do we need to be, are we called to be, in order to make a real difference with the mission of God? I mean, is that just a matter of doing something, having a project? No, not in the Bible. And so, begin to ask some questions I want to share with you right now. Number one, what does it mean to grow up and not just grow old? I had a birthday last week. What day was that? Do you remember? I mean, I know the 20th, but what day of the week was that? What was it? Wednesday. Okay, it was Wednesday of last week. When we're on this vacation thing, is kind of out of it, but Wednesday of last week, I didn't look in the mirror and go, oh boy, I think I'm getting younger. No, what happens to your body when you have a birthday? Oh, look, 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 look. There's not a brown hair left. Some of you are thinking, at least you got some, you know, and that's just kind of what happens. But is life just about growing older, or is it about growing up? That's a very different question. Is life just about growing older, or is it about growing up? You can be an absolute immature human being at 62 years old, or 58, or whatever your age is. Second question. What kind of practices and habits will help me become a more Christ-like person? Practices and habits. I know that change happens because of the work of God in our lives. But Christians make choices every day, intentional choices. And if you go back through 2,000 years of Christian history, Christians have made intentional choices to have certain habits and certain practices which help them to become more Christ-like. Number 3, how can I experience more joy in my life? More joy in my life. How can that happen? Well, one of the things Jesus addressed in his Gospels is this whole issue of who are we going to follow? Who are we going to follow? And what we're going to be talking about over the year is what it means to intentionally follow Jesus, to be his learner, to allow him to be the teacher, so that every day when I get up, I'm intentionally making choices based on him, who he is, what he did, and what he's doing. Does that make any sense? I really believe this will be helpful to us as we look across the year. You're going to hear this all year long. We're going to come at this from a lot of different angles. But every week, most every week, give some wiggle room, most every week, I'm going to suggest a practice or a habit that might be helpful. Now, let me tell you who this is for. This is for people like myself. I sure do want to grow up. I just don't want to grow old. How about you? I don't want you coming to my funeral and saying, boy, wasn't he an immature guy? I mean, he grew old, but he never grew up. And so I'm looking for these kind of practices and habits in my own life which will be helpful. I'm especially thinking about you guys in high school right now. I'm thinking, what is it like when you begin to build habits into your life at an earlier age, okay? And by the way, I really believe that this is for all of us. Don't care how old you are, really don't care how young you are. I'm going to suggest in a few weeks that you consider purchasing this book. Will be in the foyer in a few weeks. It's entitled Daily Office. Office comes from a Latin word that means opus or work, daily work. What it is a series of readings and thoughts that you do at least twice a day for 8 weeks. I'm going to talk to you in a couple of weeks about us doing this as a congregation for 8 weeks. So we all start on the same day. Okay? And what you will learn through this little reading are just some habits. And one of these habits is the habit of paying attention to what God is doing in your life and in your world every day. There's nothing magical about this, but it does involve certain habits. Okay? Talk more about that later. All right? I can't give you a cost or anything, but you may want one for if you're married, you may want one. Both of you may want one, especially to take to work, or you take yours one way and he takes his another. I'll talk more about that later. But that's the kind of thing we're going to be doing. Let me tell you what I can promise you. I can promise you that if you will stay with this, you will not be where you are today. God's people were never meant to stay the same. But this has everything to do with God's Spirit working in your life and you doing some things intentional. Now, before we shut everything down right now, I got to tell you why this is so important to me. And I want to give you a warning here. And I hear that this warning is for all of the ministers of this church. It's for all of our elders. It is for every one of you who serve as our deacons. This warning is for every one of you who are mothers, who are fathers. This warning is for all of you grandparents. And the warning is that I believe that there are two dangers that we are very susceptible to in this church. Now, you'll hear this in a minute and you'll think, well, this is true of a lot of churches. Well, we're not talking to a lot of churches. We're talking to us this morning, okay? In this church, here's number one. The danger of the spiritual recliner. How does he look? Huh? It looks pretty comfortable. The spiritual recliner. And the spiritual recliner is a place of comfort. It is static. It is passive. And you can watch the world go by. You can hear Jack make a presentation about the Village of Hope, and man, that's just great, and so proud of what you did, and all for it, and I'll help, and all that, but I want to keep a distance between myself and that sort of thing, because I'm pretty comfortable. And so, with this kind of mentality, status quo is lovely. It's lovely. I just want everything in my life to stay the same. I was talking to a mama this morning. We were talking about our kids growing up, you know. Have you noticed that doesn't work with children? They just keep growing up. I told somebody the other day I had 2 little girls and 1 wife, and now I've got 3 women and about to have 2 men I'm dealing with on a regular basis. All these adults. Well, that's life. I'm enjoying that, but sometimes I miss those other years. Do you? Just sometimes, until I see some of yours pitch a fit, and I'm thinking, whoa. But sometimes I miss that. And there's a part of us, I just kind of want everything to stay the same. I don't want to keep looking older and growing older. I just want to be who I am, the guy that just got out of high school. I just want to, but that's not our life, is it? We were never, ever, ever meant to just kind of coast along, just maintaining the status quo, as long as Daddy's comfortable, as long as Mama's happy. You kids, y'all have a good life, but don't go away too far now. Y'all come back from Ghana. Don't go away too far now on those other trips you're going to. Y'all come back. Y'all live, we want it all comfortable. Well, and then you read the Bible, and doesn't the Bible mess up a good life? Hear all this talk of adventure and faith and trusting God and daring to risk and following God when you don't have a clue where you're going, Abram and Sarah. Well, I'm just telling you, I think that's alarming. I think this is alarming. I'm telling you, I see this in my own life, in areas where I'm surprised. Here's a second warning, though, second danger. The danger of remaining emotionally and relationally immature, even while we're growing more in knowledge. The danger of remaining emotionally and relationally immature, even while we're growing more in knowledge. Think about what's inside of you right now. If you're like a lot of people, you have some scars from those early years. Not all of you do. But if you're like a lot of us, you do. You know what it is to have a daddy who didn't care a flip for you, spent half of his time off with his buddies on a golf course while you just were to fend for yourself. Or you know what it's like to have a mother who was so critical, and you grew up with just no confidence. Some of you know what it's like to grow up in alcoholic homes where there is just constant emotional confusion. Some of you know what it's like to have a father or a mother walk out of the house and it's forever. And you grow up with those kind of hurts. And if you're like a lot of us, you just shove them down. And then with your faith, you do what a friend of mine says, you just grind out the facts. Let's just get her done. Let's just do it. Well, we just need to do it. That's just what we need to do. We just need to do things. And then in the meantime, what's coming out of you is some weirdness, some anger, some rudeness. Now, as a result, we don't experience real joy, and we spend a lot of our time trying to mask our pain. And some of us try to mask our pain through success, work, career, alcohol, drugs. Some of us try to mask our pain by trying to remain as attractive as we can, thinking that somehow, as long as I can hold on to that, I'm okay. Now, I want to tell you, I don't believe we have to stay either in the recliner or immature relationally and emotionally. Have you noticed that in 1st and 2nd Timothy and in Titus, both those three letters, they're written to young evangelists, young ministers. There are sections in each, in 2 Timothy and Titus that refer specifically to elders or shepherds in churches. Sometimes we'll refer to that as qualifications of elders, though I don't think that's very good terminology. I really believe that what emerges in those books is a picture of what elders and ministers are to be in churches if they're going to model Christ-likeness. See, if you're just a regular guy like me or you or a regular woman, you need somebody to look at, to get a picture of what Christ-likeness looks like. Now, why is it that spiritual leaders are to be people of integrity? Why is that? Because following Jesus in the world calls for integrity. Why is it that spiritual leaders are not people who are curt and rude and abrupt? Because Jesus was never that way as he related to people. Well, you're saying, are there any perfect preachers or perfect elders? No. I said this before, say it again, I'm not talking about perfection, we're talking about intention. And so what you have are these elders and these ministers who are really serious about Jesus and who are trying to live out the teachings of Jesus in their own lives. And you pick it up by the way they talk about people. by the tone of their voice, by what they say. And guess what? Mamas and daddies are doing that same thing. And grandparents are doing that before their grandchildren. And we model for one another. Now, a few challenges. Number one, I really want the name of God and His fame or His renown to be the desire of my own heart. I want Him to be the desire of your heart, but I've got to start with me. You get that? Isaiah 26, verse 8. Yes, Lord, walking in the way of your laws, we wait for you. Your name and renown, your name and fame are the desire of our hearts. My soul yearns for you in the night, and in the morning my spirit longs for you. For nothing to be more important to me than at Midway High School or WISD or Lorena or China Spring or in your business that somehow people pick up the scent of God through Jesus Christ living in me so that His fame spreads and more people know His name. Second, I really want to avoid in my own life status quo thinking, both for myself and for this church. You don't see it in the gospel according to Jesus, and you don't even see it in these words from Isaiah. And I'm focused over the next year with tasting and experiencing more of Christ myself. And that's why one reason why we're going to be doing what we're be doing this year. Basically, over the next year, we're going to be talking and working toward becoming more Christ-like, depending on the Holy Spirit, but intentional about habits and practices. And so one day, he was on his way to school, 12 years old, lived on a farm. Times were hard. They didn't have a lot of money, but he was on his way to school, and he noticed the billboard. The circus was coming to town. He had never been to a circus before, but he had heard about the circuses, and he knew he wanted to go. That afternoon after school, ran home, told his daddy that Saturday the circus was going to be in their little town. And it cost $1. That was a lot of money in those days. His daddy saw that he really wanted to go. His daddy said, "Son, you get all your Saturday chores done during the week, and on Saturday, you can go to the circus." Did he ever work during the week? Nobody had to tell him to get that work done. Well, he got his chores done, got his work done by Saturday morning, got up early that morning, got dressed, went to the breakfast table, and his dad pulled out of those bibbed overalls a $1 bill. 12-year-old boy took that $1 bill, ran all the way to the little town, and he could already hear the music. They were marching down the main street of their little town. In front was the ringmaster, followed by the band with the big drums. And then there were the acrobats. And then behind the acrobats were the caged animals with 2 elephants following them. And at the very end were clowns, painted faces, floppy shoes, and floppy hats. This little guy had stood on the edge of the street along with all the other townspeople watching all of this go by until finally the last clown was about to pass him. Suddenly he ran out into the street, held out his $1, handed it to the clown, and ran away. That morning, he thought he had seen a circus, but he'd only seen a parade. Do not settle. Do not settle. And I'm telling you, the riches of Jesus Christ are more abundant than what you will ever experience in your lifetime. But do not settle for a life in a spiritual recliner, disconnected from your emotions and making a mess of your relationships. Jesus Christ has everything we need. Everything. And so what I want to do in my own life over this next year is to taste more of that, but that's going to be translated into some ways to come at that I hope will be helpful for you and for me, okay? Why don't we sing for a moment? If you need the prayers of our shepherds, they'll be at the back. Somebody will be at the front. I encourage you to pray with them. Or if you're ready to be baptized into Christ for the forgiveness of sins, we'd be glad to assist you in that this morning. Let's stand right now and sing.
I love my Jesus. He is the way, the truth, the life. I love my Jesus, Almighty God. I love my Jesus. Peace and assurance now is mine. I love my Jesus. He is my Lord. Do you love Jesus?